Balls, I actually like this album, and I certainly didn't see that coming. But that being the case, I thought I would do a review. So, this album came out way, way back in the last decade, back in the 2000 teens, way back on December 6th of 2019. Had absolutely no intention or thoughts of buying it, but damned if I didn't end up buying it, and damned if I didn't end up liking it. Talking about the new Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey album. It's the Who, you say? Well, you can call them the Who. Pete and Roger can call it the Who, but unless and until Keith Moon and John Entwistle get up out of their graves and rejoin the band, I'm calling it the Pete and Roger Show. So, like I said, I had no thoughts of buying this album at all. So, the Who, I do love the Who. I love their '60s stuff. In my opinion, I think they should have broken up in around 1968 or so. I think they did some good music after that, quite a bit actually, but I think they never matched what they did in the '60s, and I think they did a lot of sort of spotty music. But I do like certain things from certain albums after that. Um, I heard roundabout last summer that they were working on a new album, which really didn't interest me. And this came out on, I think I said that already, but if I didn't, December 6th of 2019. Did pretty well. It got to number 2 in America, it got to number 3 in England. And heard they were working on a new album. Had no interest. I did hear a preview track several months before the album came out, which didn't really rock my boat, and just sort of it increased my resolve to just let this one go without even paying any attention to it. But then, damned if Little Steven's Underground Garage didn't pick one of the songs as the song of the week, which I just heard out of nowhere one morning driving to work, and I instantly knew it was the Who. But I thought, hey, wait a minute, this isn't bad. This isn't bad. And a few days later, they played it several more times that week, and then they played it several times since. A few days later, on something I get in emails, I think it's called Classic Rock magazine or website. It's just stories about kind of takes the place of the old rock and roll press that used to be around. They were talking about the album. They had 3 or 4 videos of different songs on the album. Thought, what the hell? I listened to the videos and thought, these aren't bad either. So against against my better judgment, I'm going to go ahead and order a copy of the album, and I did. And like I said, I ended up liking it. So I guess who's next? I know that's a classic. Everyone loves it. Album bores me to death. I think it's just bland arena rock. Quadrophenia, good, better album. Still a lot of bloat on it, but some good songs. Who by Numbers is partially a great album, partially a lot of, or the rest of it's a lot of filler. Who Are You? Who Are You has some good songs on it. Title song's a great song. It's one that it's been so overplayed that if I never hear it again, I will be fine with that. Who by Numbers has probably my favorite Who song of the '70s. That'd be Slip Kid, though it might be Trick of the Light off of Who Are You. Then, of course, Keith Moon died, the heart and soul of the band, and they went on to make a couple of more albums with Kenny Jones. National treasure, Keith is. British national treasure, of course. He's not from here. Should be a 40-foot statue of him in front of Buckingham Palace, in my opinion. But actually, the 2 Kenny Jones albums I like quite a bit. That's not the usual. Most people kind of write those albums off, but I think there's a lot of filler on them. But between them, there's probably a good album between them. And anyway, then 1982 was It's Hard. That was their last studio album until 2002, 204. They came out with another Who album, a Roger and Pete album, actually, because by that time Entwistle was dead. Endless Wire. I bought that against my better judgment again. I'm not even sure why I bought it. I got it on CD. I'm not sure if that ever even came out on vinyl. Uh, Totally pointless. Just nothing in this just dull, pointless album. I gave it several. I kept it for a while and listened to it. Put it on the shelf. Took it off the shelf. A few months later, listened again. See if it's maybe it grows on me. No, this album still sucks. So, I don't know, 13, 14 years later, they come out with this album, which is titled Who. And I was expecting this to be sort of more just boring, pointless, endless wire type music. But it caught me by surprise. So, um, yeah, that's my quick little assessment of The Who. Someday maybe I'll do reviews of all the albums. And for all of that, I really do love the band. I love all those 60s singles. I love Who Sell Out is probably in my top 10 favorite all-time albums. My Generation, their first album, is pure greatness. The Quick One's the weakest of those three, but it's still got its great moments. And anyway, um, so this album, uh, December 6, 2019, came out. Number 2 in the US, number 3 in the UK, did pretty well. Roger and Pete recorded their parts separately, which is kind of strange, but Pete's kind of a strange guy anyway, always has been, so I don't know what's up with all that. The cover, pretty neat cover. I really like it. It's designed by Peter Blake. Peter Blake also, if you might remember, designed the cover of Face Dances, the Who's 1981 album, and obscure British band from some town with the goofy name of Liverpool. You guys probably never heard of, but they put out this album. Didn't sell much. Pretty obscure album, but he designed the cover for that too. So all great covers, and I really do like this because there's all sorts of. You got Chuck Berry. I'm not sure why he's there, other than he was a big influence on Townsend and the other guys in the band. You've got Muhammad Ali. Have no idea why he's there, but he's cool, so that's cool. Batman and Robin, because the Who did the Batman thing back in the '60s. Uh, Union Jack, of course, self-explanatory. Pinball for Pinball Wizard. There's a little nod to Face Dance's cover that Blake also designed. There's a guy on a scooter, a mod. There's an old dad. This guitar has Seconds to Live for the Who from back in the day. Some baked beans. That's a tribute to the Who Sell Out cover, and so other stuff like that. I think some of the stuff, I don't know what it is. That's something to do with the Royal Air Force over there in England. The back cover is just sort of the red and yellow stripes and the song titles, and the inner sleeve has got a nice picture of Pete and Roger, and then just more information and song titles, which sort of looks like the back sleeve, other than it's gray and yellow instead of red and yellow. What else? What else? What else? So yeah, like I said, one of these songs showed up on Little Steven's Underground Garage as Song of the Week, and that sort of caught me off guard. I was just it was early morning. I was heading to work, and I heard it. Instantly knew it was the Who, and thought, "Hey, this is really great." So this album is interesting. It's got some sort of sounds that the Who had never done before. It's also got a lot of that classic Who sound of oh well, I don't know if you want classic, but it's also got that Who sound of say Who Are You through It's Hard period. Let's get into the tracks on the album. The first song on side one is called All This Music Must Fade. That was the song I heard on Little Steven's Underground Garage. I don't care. I know you're going to hate this song, is how it starts out, which is kind of funny. Pete's always sort of down on himself, always has been. All This Music Must Fade. I don't know if that's a sort of a tell that this is the Who's final album, or Pete and Roger's final album, excuse me, that should say. If it is, it's certainly a worthy record to go out on. It's great. You got Daltrey singing and Townsend singing on this, and they're both really good form vocally for being whatever they are in their 70s. Uh, Probably, to be honest, better than better vocally than Paul McCartney is right now. Of course, Paul and John were always better singers than Roger or Pete anyway, but so they didn't have as far down to regress voice wise as Paul did, being one of the greatest singers of all time. But they do sound strong. They sound pretty much like they did back in the late 70s, early 80s here. So good. You got Daltrey singing the lead, just doing the barking out like Daltrey always does. Pete Townsend's shouting and carrying on behind him, and then you got them singing some harmony that sounds nice, really great. And this is a song that's sort of in the same vein as "Who Are You?" "You Better You Bet," "Athena," that sort of Who sound. Uh, Upbeat rocker, nice little anthem, great song. I really like this, and I'm glad that it still gets some airplay on the radio station, at least on Little Stevens. I don't doubt that it does on regular radio, got any, but anyway, good start to the album, good opener. All This Music Must Fade gets a 10 from me. Second song is Ball and Chain. This is the one that I heard, I don't know, back around September, October, that I didn't think much of. But now that I've just heard it one time then, but now that I've got the album and I've heard it several times, it's kind of grown on me. It's not as good as All This Music Must Fade, but it's a pretty strong song. This is actually a remake of a song called Guantanamo, which was on a Pete Townsend solo album a few years ago. I think it was a Best of Pete Townsend that had a couple of extra new songs on it. But has a nice piano intro that sort of reminds you of Quadrophenia, that sort of sound. And then it shifts into kind of a little bit of a predictable bluesy rock song, but the piano part comes back in, so that's nice. It's a little bit on the generic side, but it does grow on you over time, and it's good enough to get a 7 in my book. And so that is Ball and Chain, not the Janis Joplin song. They go to song number 3, which is I Don't Want to Get Wise, which has the lyrics, all that shit we did brought us money, I guess. More Pete, downbeat Pete, but a good, got a nice chorus. The I Don't Want to Get Wise, I guess that's the chorus, is really nice. It's a strange song, I Don't Want to Get Wise, because it's partly just a so-so song, and it's partly a great song, and the partleys come together for me enough to give it an 8.5. It grows on you. The weak parts of it, or the good parts of it, override the weak parts of it, so it gets an 8.5. So we're off to a pretty good start here, 3 songs in. Now we go to a song called Detour, which of course the Who were called the Detours very early on, for a little, not too long, but that was an early band name for them before they were the Who. It's got a nice Bo Diddley beat, and some nice tempo changes. There's a part about "We lost, we went off course." I don't know if that's Pete singing about the Who, or if that's him singing about music over the last 35 years in general, or just the world in general. But some really nice, again, Roger's singing here is really nice. This is a good, probably not hit single material. Not that the Who are going to have a hit single in this day and age, or any of the people from that era, unfortunately. But great album cut. Some good drumming and guitar playing here. This is Zach Starkey on drums mainly. I think Pete's brother does some percussion too, Simon Townsend, but mainly Zach Starkey. Good drumming, good guitar. The fade out has a little bit of the feel of Baba O'Reilly and Let My Love Open the Door from Pete's great Empty Glass solo album from 1980, which I would say was probably the best, better than any Who album going back to Sell Out, in my opinion. But anyway, Detour, it gets a 10. I really like that song. Now we go to the 5th song on a side 1, which is called Beads on One String. Has a kind of a 1985, 86 sounding ballad thing. It's enjoyable enough, but it's kind of dull. Sort of sounds like something that they would have done for the soundtrack of the Miami Vice TV show. Just sort of smacks of the '80s, kind of a dated sound. It's not a great song, and I'm going to give it only a 5. We close out, I think, yes, we close out the album with a song called Hero Ground Zero. Uh, this is what I thought the whole album would sound like before I heard it or expected it to sound like. The just boring endless wire stuff. Like I said, this is crap. It's just blustering power ballad crap. The drums are nice and there's some nice guitar bits, but in the end, this is just musty, stale bread dad rock, and I'm only going to give it a 3. It's I believe that's the be the low point of the album. Um, Things don't get much better when we flip over to side 2 and get a song called Street Song, which is another something sounds like it came out in 1988, sort of like a Peter Gabriel reject song or something. Not very good, pretty dull. I'm going to give that one a 5. Things Look Up, though, with I'll Be Back. Townsend sings on this one. It's a strange change of pace for The Who, something they've kind of never done. They've done slow songs, they've done ballads and touching songs, but this has really got a nice, really nice harmonica. It's kind of an adult contemporary song, which is about as far as you can get from Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere, My Generation, and Live at Leeds and things like that. Sounds like the Climax Blues Band or something. Kind of sounds like 80s era, early 80s era Elton John stuff in a way. Not sure that the 14-year-old, and when I first got into The Who, that's when I was about 14 years old, got into them off of Who Are You, and then discovered the early stuff that I'd never heard, like My Generation. Prior to that, I only knew Squeezebox, which I never liked, still don't, and Pinball Wizard, which is one of their famous tracks, but just never did it for me. But Who Are You I liked, and then I discovered My Generation, which I'd never heard, and I Can See for Miles and stuff like that. But anyway, so I was about 14 when I got into The Who, is what I'm rambling on about there. But I don't know that I would have liked this when I was 14 or 15. Maybe I would have, though. But I like it a lot now, and it's a nice change of pace, and it's a nice surprise to see from Pete and Roger. And I'll Be Back, I'm going to give a 9, so pretty high up there. Third song on side 2 is called Break the News. This is a strange one. It sounds like Paul McCartney from, I don't know, from like 86, 87 era Paul McCartney. Talk sound and stuff. It's a funny little song. It's kind of bouncy and upbeat. Really does sound like something that Paul might have written for one of his albums. But it's in the end just okay, so I'm going to give it a 6. Fourth song is Rocking Rage, which sounds again like just that classic Who sound of, say, Quadrophenia era Who. Rocking in Rage, well past my prime. Maybe that's sort of a backhanded comment to Hope I Die Before I Get Old from My Generation. A bit of a generic rocker too, but a pretty good one. It's got some nice guitar. I'm going to give Rocking Rage a 7. And so, what do we got left? We got one last song on side 2. The closer is called She Rocked My World, which might be about a girl. Pete wrote all these songs, by the way, with the exception of one song I think his brother wrote, and one song he wrote with someone else. But otherwise, he wrote all the songs. So I think this might be about a girl, possibly from his past, a true love from his past. But I think it's more singing about just a one-off encounter with a girl that he hooked up with somewhere back there. It's got another kind of sound that the Who hadn't done before, so it's a bit of a surprise, and it's a nice surprise too. Kind of a soft shoe samba rhythm to the song. Really good way to end the album, and She Rocked My World gets a 10. So that's the album, except for if you bought the CD, which I didn't, and I might end up going and getting the CD now. You get some bonus tracks. So 4 bonus tracks are out there. The first one, This Gun Will Misfire, is just sort of a mid-level rock song. Not bad, not good. I'll give This Gun Will Misfire a 6. There's nothing particularly thrilling about it one way or the other. Now we get to Got Nothing to Prove. This is a 1966 Who recording. It's a demo. This is a song that Pete wrote back probably around the time of the Quick One album, maybe in between that and Sellout, but they ended up not using it at the time. Their manager convinced them to write stronger material or whatever, I don't know. And I think they even tried to give this song to some other bands and they didn't use it. So Pete dredged this up from 54, 53 years ago. And so it's the demo, but they've also added orchestration and strings, which gives it this sort of a. It's a great song. It's the 1966 recording. It's with Pete singing. So if the Who would have ended up recording it, probably would have had Roger singing, but Pete singing on the demo. And to the demo he added orchestration and strings, like I said. And you've got this, adds this really James Bondish tinge to it, and it's just a really sunshine pop gem that it's a shame the Who didn't record it back in 66 or 67. This may not have been, it's not as strong as I Could See for Miles or Substitute or Pictures of Lily or something like that, so it may not have been single material, but it would have been a great album track. And Who Sell Out and My Generation are just teeming with great album tracks, so would have fit right in. It's a treat of a song from 1966 with some 2019 updating with the strings, and Got Nothing to Prove gets a 10 in my book. The other song is, the third song is Danny and My Ponies, kind of a strange title. It's a slow song. It's got some auto-tune here. Pete sings all three of these, The Gun and the Got Nothing and Danny and My Ponies. Some auto-tune, dreaded auto-tune on there. And I think he's trying to go for sort of the sprawling Springsteen epic that tells a story, kind of the Springsteen of The River and Darkness on the Edge of Town and Born to Run days, or Greetings from Asbury Park those days. Epic type song, but the song's really not that interesting, and it's just one of those sort of their songs, unfortunately. So Danny and the Ponies only gets a 4 from me. And that is the bonus tracks, except if you happen to live in Japan and got the Japanese bonus track CD or deluxe edition or whatever, you get an extra track which is called Sand, like sand on the beach. This is another 1966 demo. It's got some really neat that percussion, that magic bus sounding percussion. It's got some of the guitar riffs and feedbacks that sort of remind you of Anywhere, Anyway, Anyhow, that sort of stuff. This the demo would have been another great song that would have fit in perfectly, I think, on one of their 60s albums. Probably not the making of a hit 45 again, but would have been great on an album. But it's great that Pete pulled that out of 1966 and added it. I guess you have to go to Japan if you want to get it, or you can just check YouTube and hear it there. Sand gets a 10. This album overall, I'm shocked and surprised, happily so, to give an 8.5 to. And like I said, I know I saw The Who in 1982. Both of them were good shows, so unfortunately Keith was already gone by that time. And then I saw him in 1989, which was a terrible, depressing, dreadful show because they were over by then. They just kept on going though. And 82 was supposed to be was billed as their farewell tour. They've done, I don't know, 50 or 60 farewell tours since then. I've got a feeling that once Pete and Roger leave this world, that their kids will just carry on, and then their grandkids and great grandkids, and 200 years from now, I guess kids will probably be able to go see the Who's 500th farewell tour. I don't know, but if this is the end of the Who as Pete and Roger or whatever as far as albums, then this is a pretty damn good album to go out on, and it more than makes up for the snooze fest that was Endless Wire. I'm shocked. I'm surprised. I really like this, and one of the best albums of last year. Not that there was a whole lot of competition, but this is a really good album, a fun album. It's got a lot of the classic Who sound, some of the '60s Who sound, some sounds that you're not used to getting from the Who that are pretty good. There's a couple of dogs on there, but by and large, pretty strong album, and I couldn't be more pleased. So check it out, and I'll be back eventually with continuing the John Lennon reviews and other stuff. I know I've been around away for a while, but I've been busy. Hope everybody's having a good February and winter, and I can't think of anything else to say. So